I want to make something very clear. The war against crypto, the war that our own government has started, has been a treacherous one. And it's filled to the brim with lies and deception. Understand that every move that our politicians have made have been equally cold as they were calculated. It goes beyond just Gary Gensler regulating through enforcement. It goes beyond Elizabeth Warren bickering about Jerome Powell's stance on regulation. Watching these past few weeks pan out, it's made it clear to me that crypto has become the scapegoat through which the legacy system will carry out their true agenda. There's no better example of this than to determine the truth behind the downfall of Signature Bank. Let's get it.
And customers now are left with assurances from federal officials and also from inside the bank after the state bank regulators shut the bank down on Sunday. And again, as you mentioned, this is the third largest bank closure in U.S. history. To some extent, this is part of the panic surrounding the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, which has left many small and mid-sized banks like Signature Bank vulnerable to bank runs. But New York Governor Kathy Hochul says that many of the businesses that bank with Signature Bank are small businesses, and federal officials are, again, reassuring customers that they will be made whole.
I find it funny that when the Signature Bank story runs on national television, they'll tell you that it was the third largest bank failure in history. They say that the FDIC insures all deposits up to $250,000. But what they don't tell you on ABC is the real reason why and how this happened. It has everything to do with the one thing they didn't mention, crypto. Take a peek behind the curtain of collusion. Signature Bank had humble beginnings when they were founded in New York back in 2001. They earned their stripes with local business as a better alternative than the bigger banks down the street. Signature dotted their I's and crossed their T's back in 2018 when they created the infrastructure they needed to transact up-and-coming crypto assets. Similar to how Silvergate had the SEN, Signature Bank had the Signet, which was a 24/7 payment network that put them on the map as one of the top banks in crypto with 40 locations across the U.S. At the end of last year, Signature Bank held $110 billion in assets and over $88 billion in deposits. Unfortunately, a few short days ago, on March 12th to be exact, the New York State Department of Financial Services closed the doors and took over Signature Bank. In a joint statement from the Department of the Treasury, Federal Reserve, and the FDIC, they stated, "Today, we're taking decisive actions to protect the U.S. economy by strengthening public confidence in our banking system." That's political jargon for we're going to do what we want to accelerate our own agenda, and there's nothing you can do about it. In all seriousness, this presser was really about the regulators finalizing their newfound control over Silicon Valley Bank, which was another financial powerhouse that also went down in the same 48-hour period. The presser added that Signature Bank was also getting taken over due to systemic risk. That's right, a systemic risk. How they quantify or justify that, or what that means, well, it's purely up to them. There's something more to the Signature story here, but we'll get to that later in the video. Stay on track with the joint statement for both aforementioned banks catches that the depositors will get their money back, and the taxpayers won't have to pay a single penny. People who were not protected by this calculated chess move, people who were hurt the most and got left holding the bag, unfortunately, was the shareholders. Circle back to this point in a few moments. Before we delve into more on Signature, let's also address the other banks that have recently gone belly up. We know that Silvergate, which used to be crypto's darling in the banking industry, has recently voluntarily closed its doors. There are a plethora of reasons that caused Silvergate to go down, but at the end of the day, it boils down to the FTX contagion paired with regulatory pressure. This is a massive blow to crypto, as so many companies use their SEN network for banking and instant settlements. Next on the hit list is Silicon Valley Bank, which was the second largest banking failure in American history. California regulators that closed down that stated they had inadequate liquidity and insolvency. Although they didn't have a payment network like the SEN or Signet, they were still a tech bank. Many crypto companies still had exposure to SPV. USDC even temporarily lost its peg because they had $3.3 billion in exposure to SPV. Signature Bank, however, is the odd man out in the trio of crypto-friendly banks. Like Silvergate and SPV, Signature was forced to close their doors and give away the key despite the fact they weren't technically insolvent. So they had plenty of money left, $4.4 billion to be exact. To be fair, there was a prior investigation at Signature Bank for possible money laundering before the seizure. Other than the fact that there was an investigation, no hard evidence came out of it, or at least it wasn't released to the public. As of right now, in all the news and articles on the internet about the situation, There's nothing that directly incriminates Signature Bank, but I happen to know that they weren't exactly squeaky clean like everyone's making them out to be. From what I know from inside sources, they were definitely wishy-washy with their anti-money laundering policies. In all likelihood, the main players from Signature Bank will probably do time in prison. Regardless, just because this inside information incriminates Signature doesn't mean that they still weren't targeted for being involved in crypto. Just because they weren't angels doesn't mean that their seizure by the regulators wasn't a part of a coordinated attack to dismantle crypto. It's tough to argue against this theory though, because Signature got removed from the board when other banks were in much bigger financial trouble than they were. According to Nisa Moyles over at Forbes, another bank that had been under even more pressure than Signature in recent days, First Republic, was not shut down. According to Nick Carter on Twitter, Signature asset portfolio wasn't even close to as bad as Silicon Valley's. So tell me this, why was Signature Bank forced to close their doors when other banks were much worse off, especially when they weren't insolvent? The answer to that question is plain and simple. The answer is this is an attack on crypto. This here is where we start to peel back the layers of the coordinated, calculated plan from the US government to do away with crypto. Yes, this is an attempt to protect the legacy TradFi system, but most importantly, this is about maintaining complete control. Big Brother isn't just watching, he's bullying. We've known for a while that it was only a matter of time until crypto gets some sort of meaningful regulation, and to be honest, I'm surprised we flew under the radar as long as we did. It's probable that the powers that be let crypto fly under the radar long enough for it to make enough mistakes for their biases to be supported with evidence. Bad actor politicians like Gary Gensler, Janet Yellen, and Elizabeth Warren have been sounding off for quite some time. But after the fallout of Luna, FTX, Celsius, and Voyager, they knew they needed to make a move sooner rather than later. That's assuming they weren't already in on it beforehand. We all know about the backroom meetings between SBF and Gensler, so it's really hard to tell when this materialized. But regardless, after spending the entirety of 2022 in a bear market, it's crystal clear to me that 2023 would be the year that changes everything in crypto. And that has nothing to do with price. Sure enough, just as January 2023 comes around, the Biden administration released a roadmap to mitigate cryptocurrency's risks. At this point, it was obvious that the plan was already in motion. Already this year, without even waiting for the outcome of the XRP case to set a precedent, Gensler has gone AWOL, calling everything under the sun of security, even stablecoins. Regardless, at the end of the day, this whole push is a government power struggle to control crypto in any way they can. They know they can't stop crypto. If it's forced to, it can and will continue to mine new blocks outside of America. We know to hurt crypto, going after stablecoins would be an effective path. CBDCs are coming, but we aren't quite ready for them yet. So the next logical step for them to dismantle crypto would be to go after the exchanges and cut off people from their banks. Fast forward to the here and now, the snowballed into the downfall of Silvergate and SVB from their insolvencies, and into the downfall of Signature because of a crisis in confidence in banks' leadership. Yes, those are the words the New York regulator used when they took control of Signature Bank. Unbelievable. Can't help but to feel sorry for all those Signature shareholders who were affected by this because they got left holding the bag, especially when there's not an exact quantification of why Signature was seized. I know the bank wasn't perfect, but you can't just shut down a bank because of a subjective matter such as a crisis in confidence. Of course, the shareholders are suing Signature for fraud, but obviously that's the only play they have left to try to get their money. Key point you have to understand is that it remains to be seen if they could or could not pass a stress test. Yes, $10 billion did go off the books of Signature from the Silicon Valley contagion, but at the end of the day, they were still operational, and they still weren't insolvent. Truth is, this happened to them because they were crypto friendly. I wholeheartedly believe with Crypto Wendigo when she said that what the regulators did was unethical and it should be illegal.
Because what they're doing, it is unethical and it should be illegal.
See, she said that, and she's right. We must remember, crypto was born out of the 2008 financial crisis. It's our way to vote with our wallets and fight back against the system. It's our way to have control over our own financial sovereignty, financial freedom. And that's exactly what they're trying to take from us. Not only that, they're trying to blame crypto for the issues with the banking system. What a joke. Find it funny that while all this was going on, Bitcoin rallied over 30% from below $20,000 all the way to $26,000. That shows you right there that people do understand that we need crypto now more than ever. Despite the positive price action, the internet and the crypto community at large is furious over the government's blatant attack against crypto. Back in February, before the banks went down, Jerome Powell coined this coordinated attack as Operation Chokepoint 2.0. Given everything we've already seen and everything that's secretly happening in the background, Operation Chokepoint 2.0 isn't a baseless internet conspiracy, it's real. Barney Frank, Signature Bank board member and former U.S. representative, stated that regulators wanted to send a very strong anti-crypto message. We, Signature, became the poster boy because there was no insolvency based on the fundamentals. Of course, Mr. Frank is going to stand up for the bank he works for, but that didn't stop this statement from reverberating throughout the internet. Plethora of big names inside and out of the crypto industry agree with Barney Frank's take. Sorry's founder, Ryan Selkis, stated that Signature was healthy and why DFS went rogue in shutting them down and surprised even the FDIC. Nick Carter stated that Barney Frank openly admits the Signature was arbitrarily shuttered despite no insolvency because regulators wanted to kill off the last major pro-crypto bank. Colossal scandal. Even if the investigation about Signature's questionable AML policies comes out, it doesn't take away from the validity and the argument that Ryan and Nick are making. This frustration doesn't end with big names in crypto. U.S. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer wrote a strongly worded letter to the chairman of the FDIC regarding reports that the FDIC is weaponizing recent instability in the banking sector to purge legal crypto activity from the U.S. Emmer also requested the FDIC response to him by Friday, March 24th. Definitely curious to hear how they'll respond to that. It does give me hope that there are some politicians out there that are fighting for crypto, see how valuable it is. It also gives me hope that as USDC and Coinbase have turned to New Jersey's Cross River Bank for their automated settlements and banking needs, let's just pray that this bank isn't the next target for the vindictive plan to destroy crypto. And if it does get taken down, it will be obvious, more than obvious, what the government is doing. To be honest, I don't know what they're thinking. The government is making a massive mistake. Think about this. It's not an intelligent move to force crypto innovation off our shores and give everyone else an economical advantage over us. America wants to remain the financial apex predator, but they're literally opening the window of opportunity for our enemies. For as calculated as Operation Chokepoint 2.0 seems to be, in the long run, it's not a strategic move at all. And for all you non-believers out there who think the seizure of Signature Bank was not part of a meticulous plan to dismantle crypto, let me drive home a hard-hitting fact that really exposes the intentions of the government. Right now, the regulators have control of Signature Bank. But whatever bank or entity decides to purchase what's left of Signature Bank, once they buy it, they are not allowed to purchase the crypto part of it. The Signet, the instant settlement platform, is gone forever. Cannot tell me for a second this was not part of the plan. Do you want to know what really cements it all for me? While all the crypto banks were collapsing, Fidelity Crypto quietly went live. How wonderful. They opened their doors completely under the radar, and now millions of retail traders can now go purchase either Bitcoin or Ethereum at Fidelity. Fidelity's story is ironic in its own right, but here's the icing on the cake. Just as the top crypto-friendly banks with instant payment systems get torched, just as the ashes settle, the U.S. Federal Reserve announced the roll out of FedNow, their very own instant payment system. And it's coming this July. How convenient. What great timing. It's like the whole thing was planned or something. That's all I got. Be blessed. BitBoy out.